Shelling of Ukraine's energy system will stop if Kyiv accepts Russia's conditions. Onward to a nuclear winter. International Atomic Energy Agency resolution allows Ukraine to shell Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant. Europeans should freeze to death for the sake of democratic ideals. Find out about these and other Russian propaganda fakes in today's episode. Detector Media did all the dirty fact-checking work for you. We have separated real facts from those of a parallel universe. My name is Vadym Miskyi. In the next 10 minutes, I will tell you about the most impressive examples of Kremlin propaganda, as well as about some international media that use unverified sources of information. Here we go. The Kremlin has stopped hiding the motives behind its terror. The shelling of Ukraine's energy system will stop if Kyiv accepts Russia's condition. This manipulative message is spread by pro-Kremlin media. They refer to the press secretary of Russian President Dmitry Peskov, who openly stated that Ukraine needs to give in to the Kremlin to keep the light and heat supply running. Using this kind of messages, Russia is blackmailing Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, trying to force them to negotiate with the aggressor.
Colleagues, it seems that Putin is determined to reduce Ukraine's energy facilities to rubble. Putin's motive could not be more clear and more cold-blooded. He is clearly weaponizing winter to inflict immense suffering on the Ukrainian people. He has decided that if he can't seize Ukraine by force, he will try to freeze the country into submission.
Russia is also trying to shift the responsibility for its crimes onto the Ukrainian authorities. The Kremlin claims that the lack of electricity and heat in Ukraine is the result of the actions of Ukrainian leaders who refuse to negotiate. However, power outages are the result of regular enemy shelling. The UN Security Council condemned Russia's missile attacks on Ukraine.
Humanitarian actors in Ukraine are working to support people facing the challenges imposed by the energy shortage. Over the past weeks, more than 430,000 people have received some sort of direct winter assistance, and nearly 400 generators have been distributed to ensure energy in hospitals, schools, and other critical facilities. I will say it once again. Attacks targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure are prohibited under international humanitarian law. So are attacks against military objectives that may be expected to cause harm to civilians that would be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated.
NATO warns that Russia will not stop its terror campaign.
President Putin is failing in Ukraine, and he's responding with more brutality. Waves of deliberate missile attacks on cities and civilian infrastructure, depriving Ukrainians of heat, light, and food. This is a horrific start to the winter for Ukraine. These are also tough times for the rest of Europe and around the world, with rising energy and food prices. Yes, we are all paying a price for Russia's war against Ukraine, but the price we pay is in money, while the price Ukrainians pay is in blood. And if we let Putin win, all of us will pay a much higher price for many years to come. If Putin and other authoritarian leaders see that force is rewarded, they will use force again to achieve their goals.
Now Russia is trying to whitewash its reputation and discredit the Ukrainian government, claiming that they do not care about the civilian population. Official permission to shoot. The IAEA resolution allows Ukraine to shell the Zaporizhzhya NPP. This disinformation is spread by Russian propaganda media. The reports claim that the resolution adopted by the International Atomic Energy Agency is supposedly unprofessional, politicized, and inappropriate. This is fake. The document is focused on the security of Ukrainian nuclear sites in the context of Russian attacks on Ukraine's critical infrastructure.
Yesterday, for the first time ever, all of Ukraine's 4 operational nuclear power plants, Zaporizhzhya, Rivne, South Ukraine, and Khmelnytskyi, lost external power and were disconnected from the grid. They were all forced to rely on emergency diesel generators for the electricity they need to ensure their continued safety and security. This unprecedented situation would have been unimaginable just months ago. It is deeply worrying. At the start of a war, I outlined the 7 indispensable pillars for safety and security, which include that physical integrity must be maintained and there must be secure off-site power. I appeal today that these pillars must be respected to ensure that all Ukraine's nuclear power plants are not affected in this way again.
According to Stop Fake fact-checkers, the document does not contain any hints of permission for the shelling of Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant. Also, the resolution cannot be called politicized because the document contains only an analysis of the security situation at Ukrainian nuclear sites in terms of Russian shelling. It also calls on the Kremlin to abandon its destabilizing actions at the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant. The United States no longer believes in Ukraine's military victory over Russia. This fake news was spread by Kremlin propagandists. The argument was supposedly made by the US Armed Forces General Mark Milley during a briefing. They claim that he called Ukraine's chances of success on the battlefield low. This is not true. General Milley only suggested that the likelihood that Ukraine will liberate its entire territory exclusively by military means within the next few weeks is very low. At the same time, Milley stressed that the chances for Russia to defeat Ukraine are close to zero.
I think the Ukrainians should keep the pressure on the Russians, to the extent that they militarily can. But winter gets very, very cold, and the natural tendency is for tactical operations are going to naturally probably slow down. There could be a lot of activity in the winter, but typically speaking, because of the weather, the tactical operations will slow down a bit. And I think that President Biden and President Zelensky himself has said that there'll be at the end of the day there'll be a political solution. So if there's a slowdown in the actual tactical fighting, if that happens, then that may become a window. Possibly, it may not. For a political solution, or at least the beginnings of talks to initiate a political solution. So that's all I was saying.
By distorting the words of the American general, Russian propagandists are trying to undermine the achievements of the Ukrainian army in the face of Russian defeats on the battlefield. Europeans should freeze to death for the sake of democratic ideals. This fake was spread by Russian propagandists referring to Josep Borrell. The reports claim that the EU High Representative supposedly called on all Europeans to turn off the heating in their homes. They claim that EU residents were actually asked to freeze to death so that democratic ideals would not be harmed. However, this is not true. According to analysts of the EU versus Disinfo project, the EU High Representative Josep Borrell did not make any such statement. It was spread by a Telegram channel that posts political satire. The account's profile states that it publishes only satirical and false information. However, Russian propagandists picked up this fake and decided to present it as the truth. Several EU governments have indeed called on their citizens to lower their heating temperatures to reduce gas dependence on Russia. However, this does not mean that people are asked to freeze to death for the ideals of democracy. Russia is losing the energy battle, says the head of the International Energy Agency.
Russia will be a loser of this energy battle for the following reason. Just before the invasion, about 75% of the Russian total gas exports went to Europe, and 55% of the Russian oil exports went to Europe. And now Europe was by far the largest market, largest client for Russia. And Russia lost this client forever. And you cannot, that gas, quickly build the pipelines to send China or India. It will take, in the most optimistic case, 10 years to build these pipelines.
Also, Russian gas will be removed from the joint gas purchase contracts. This was agreed upon by the EU energy ministers. The focus is on energy efficiency.
It is important to keep in mind that the EU's plan for this winter does not consist only of demand reduction. We have worked closely with the Member States to improve the contingency plans. The new storage rules were proposed and adopted at record speed, leading to the current storage level of more than 66%. Based on the REPowerEU, renewable deployment has been accelerated, and we have seen records broken in green energy production this year. Energy efficiency has become an even more important part of Member States' recovery plans.
Russia has been regularly spreading the idea that Europeans will not survive the coming winter because of the sanctions against Russia. But the Kremlin better worry about its own status. The European Parliament has recognized Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism.
Vote is closed, and it is broadly adopted. Congratulations.
I hope Putin and his circle will understand that after this resolution is adopted, the Kremlin has zero chances to return to business as usual with the EU. Ukrainians are grateful to our international partners for such support. It brings our victory closer. See you soon.